And we are live. Hello, everybody. I got my Tiffany, my evil twin. We have Amber, that's a at the moment. There she is. And we have Justice for Jess. And we have my other client. Her name is, we're going to go by RK. I know her real name, but for privacy purposes, we'll still stay with that. And you are on mute, dear. You got to unmute your mic. RK. Unmute the mic. It's on the.
It's quite loud here. That's why it's muted.
So what's the situation?
Do you want me to sum it up since I know you're do you want me to sum it up since I know you're like in public?
Yes.
Okay. She has a 12-year-old that is being sexually abused by dad, and he is filed for termination of mom's rights. They are trying to terminate her rights tomorrow.
Oh,
and
wait a minute. Dad is sexually abusing the daughter, but filed to terminate mom's rights.
And this is where I say Jess might be a little helpful in this because it has to deal with military in Italy, and daughter does not want to go with dad. Daughter's put more than one thing up saying that she does not want to go with dad. And she's being forced to go with dad, including reunification camps. And you guys all know how horrible those are.
I do have a question. You said it's military. Is he active?
I believe he is still active military, RK. Just nod. Is he still active
So what
military?
has happened is when you are in the military, you have the ability to if you're in there for over 6 years, you have the ability to request a court or not a court martial. I apologize. My brain doesn't work as well as it should right now. But it's where he has a certain number of people kind of review him, and they decide administratively whether or not his career matches up with keeping him in the military versus kicking him out of the military. They don't actually look at the real abuse or anything of that nature. And then, of course, if the court doesn't allow the child to testify in the thing, there's no testimony for them to go off of.
Now, let me ask you, because military is my foreground. Did you go to Fleet and Family? Is there an open Fleet and Family case? Is there a JAG representative to this case, like representing you or your daughter? Because Fleet and Family is the one that actually is supposed to be coordinating with outside civilian sources.
Give her a minute. I think
we lost her.
Uh-huh.
Or she covered her.
But I will hook you guys up with her in a group chat because, yes, this is kind of really serious.
Well, typically with the military, when they do that stuff, they have their own policies. And if FAP's not doing their job, then that falls on the actual command, like the base, because FAP has specific policies that states that any active duty military or any child that's experiencing any type of abuse, they have like a board. And they're supposed to review all of this and then coordinate outside with social services. So what they're probably doing, depending on what locality he is, they're probably trying to bogart it, and unfortunately you see that in the military.
It depends if he's been convicted, number one. And it depends on what evidence there is, number two, on what will happen. So that's what we have to look at on the military and what's going to happen going forward and the charge. So
if they charged him, because I've seen it too where they don't charge them and they keep it quiet.
And I believe she said is he still stationed in Italy?
So he's actually stationed in South Korea until March, and that he's requesting what the judge said the last during temporary order was that she didn't want to release the child if she was not in Bexar County at all. And he requested for him to be, or her to be taken to a completely different post, which is a totally different state altogether, out of her jurisdiction. So all of this is just very interesting how it's playing out.
Yeah, and we can talk after the live too if you need more information, because there's a lot to this.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's actually kind of good justice on here because this is going to be like a teamwork effort between all of us.
Well, I want to know.
Yeah, you
I
can
want to
have
know
a phone
the
number after this.
backstory. How did Dad end up with custody?
Can you repeat that question?
How did all this unveil? Pretty much.
How did Dad
I'm going
end
to
up
tell you
with
right now. Jeff and Amber are going to be your military people for that because I know nothing about the military other than I will never join. But go ahead. Spanny, what happened?
How did you wind up with custody?
So he filed at the peak of COVID, and basically because COVID was such a delay, it ended up being that we were already in Italy for 2 years, and then there was a switch of custody at that point. He was claiming she was at the point of learning that she had ADHD, and she was in 2nd grade, and him to be able to get her medication adjusted. So he claimed that there was a lot of issues in regards to her schooling. And I was like, well, first off, she's in 2nd grade. And secondly, she has ADHD, combination type. It's not just regular ADHD. So it took 2 medication changes and almost 2 years to be able to get her where she was supposed to be.
I do have a question.
A couple days before she was supposed to be going over to him, and there was supposed to be a custody change at that point, we petitioned to let the judge know at that time, Tina Torres, to take note or be aware that there was a military protective order, and that they should honor that and consider it. But she was sent over there and lived basically with stepmom while he was assigned a barracks room. And as long as his command was present, they were able to have contact.
Here, let me stop you right there because the military MPOs are actually supposed to be held to full-fledged, and that goes depending on what branch he is, and I'm assuming it's Navy, if you said Italy. NCIS is actually that, or you go to CID if it's Army, but they are actually required to uphold the MPOs to full-fledged. And there's actually a section in the DoD policy that state that the military protective orders are supposed to actually be honored at a civilian letter. They're supposed to be able to be entered in like a military protective order from another state.
Amber, none of this has gone like it's supposed to.
And that is a problem with sex offenders, is it never goes like it should, especially during COVID.
I will defend her on that because I talked with her a long time last night, and this is a whole military drop the ball.
Oh, they did it, and they did it. I've seen them do it, and until you get everybody together, it's one of those things where you have to contact several different parties because
he has.
Yeah, but it's better when you have other people contacting on her behalf, and that's kind of where we're at.
It's going to be a team effort because this is bad.
Okay.
I don't even know what to say.
I think part of the reason there was such an issue, though, is because we were living in Italy and he was living in South Korea, but Bexar County, Texas had the case.
okay, wait a minute. Mom was in Italy. Dad was in South Korea, I think. But the custody was done in the United States, in Texas. Well, then the United States and Texas hold the jurisdiction.
Correct. You would think.
Right, because the child was not born in a different country. Am I correct?
Correct.
Correct. She was
Because the
born in
only
Wisconsin.
way that there can be a dual custody battle in 2 different or 3 different places is if the child is got dual citizenship.
Does she?
Does she have dual citizenship? So then
No,
she's a
she's an
United
American.
States. She's an American citizen. Her custody, everything is supposed to be in Texas. But I will tell you, custody orders are very funny, especially the UCCJEA, because if you both leave, that means there is technically no custody papers anymore.
That's terrible.
The thing is we actually had a judge right before, because he tried to stop us from going to Italy. Of course, because my husband was in the service, he didn't want us to leave Bear County because his mom lived in Bear County. And my husband being in Italy, he didn't seem like it made sense, even though my husband has known her since she's been 4. She's been a father figure her whole life. So we had a judge actually say, no, it's really in her best interest to go to Italy and be with her family. And of course, she also has a brother who is now 5, and we pray for her every night. He still draws her pictures. He cries and wishes that there were times where she was there to be
So
able
is
to
that
like play with.
stepdad or bio
'Cause they were
dad?
virtually inseparable.
Yeah, I'm confused.
It's biological father that I know it gets hairy, right? Biological father is the one who did what he did.
Okay, that we're just making sure. Okay.
Are they both in service?
Yes, they're both in the service. They're both in the Army.
Okay.
Does the father of this child have other children?
I just heard. Can you ask that question one more time?
Does the biological father have other children?
No, he does not.
Okay, so
and
what
as
are
soon as he met stepmom, that's when
all hell broke loose? So what is the grounds for terminating
let's see.
rights?
What are the grounds for what?
For trying to terminate your
sorry.
rights. That's okay. Fanny, what are their grounds to terminate her rights? I don't see any grounds.
There is none. It's just the typical neglect charges that they're going to try to throw at her for no reason.
Happening more and more with sex offenders.
Because he's alleging parental alienation on my part.
So you're stealing
I
your
mean,
kid.
Jess, you know this. There's specific policies that address civilian stuff, and then there's proceeding policies.
Teacher, she didn't write letters to me. Her and I spoke about the letters, and of course,
Okay, we lost you on that bottom or that last part. Sorry. Oop,
There's
really
proceeding policies for the military, and when you go CID and NCIS and the MPOs, that county and that place, the issue is, yes, it is a United States born citizen, okay? however.com, when you are stationed elsewhere and you talk jurisdiction, you're absolutely correct. But you've got an issue again where a command, now my issue was HSC 28, hey, the Brandon Act, but you've got that issue out the gate with these commands where they are blocking these men and women from getting the services that they need. So when they go and they report these assaults, these Fleet and Family professionals aren't doing their job. So, I mean, I'm surprised that she doesn't have a JAG person that has been assigned yet, because the command is actually supposed to be going to every single one of these hearings if he's not actually able to be there. And
Correct.
so there's a lot of stuff that they aren't going to be able to really kind of push that, because this is where the DOD should and shall get involved. And, you can open stuff that way if you know how to do it. And I think that's where like your knowledge of the justice system comes in. Mine's just the policies for the military. I don't want to see this happen, but my concern is you have several countries involved here, and
Right.
you
That's
also
the
have to look at the laws and regulations for transitioning service members from country to country. Does she have a passport? Wouldn't that be technically potentially under the Hague Convention with the transition of kidnapping of a kid being removed out of the jurisdiction of the United States to basically conceal her location in another country? I mean, maybe that's just a way that I see it, but I see that there's a lot of not talking. And unless they have charges actually on her, the military gets federal funding, but their federal funding through their contracts is through Fleet and Family. And Fleet and Family has been notorious for dropping the ball on these families. I mean, I can relate to her story, 4 years of this, excuse my language, shit. And they don't do their job and protect these dependents or these children. And we're kind of at the same thing of these county judges also don't realize that, these military members potentially get hit with double jeopardy, but there needs to be a little bit more talking. Like, I wonder if it's possible for a UCCJEA hearing, and a judge advocate actually speak on her behalf, because if she is a victim and at any time if she went and reported her issues to the command, then they have a policy that they then have to initiate to protect her. And those are things that I'm assuming 90% of the dependents, they go and they talk to all these people and they're like, help me, help me. And at the end of the day, the command's like, yeah, I got you, but they don't do it. So they drop the ball. So I think it's going to be a correlation between like state and country laws. And then I think it's going to be,
Right.
going to the DOD and seeing what policies are actually still applicable in this case, because if this is an actual thing, unfortunately, I've seen families that are 3 times with multiple kids in her boat, and they're doing this. And so then I wonder if it's like, kind of like how they did the Military Accountability Act, it's time that they do the Dependent and Children Accountability Act, or the Kids Across America Accountability Act, and kind of tying all the loops, because what I'm noticing is the military is loving putting it on the states, but the states then, kind of throw it and lobby it back. And so it's like, maybe this is that time where everything kind of comes together and we ask for an accountability, to kind of not only break the jurisdiction down, but kind of, fix this. Like, why do you have policies that state that you're protected? Why do you have this, and this, and all these grants? Are their grants no different though than social services? Because I believe they're under the same funding level. I just lived it and breathed it, and I'm still breathing it every day. These two ladies will tell you with the military and the VA. I mean, my frauded med board. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, this is what gets me the most is there's so many people in this boat. So it's like, how do we all push together to say, hey guys, we need to fix this because these kids are suffering, You know, last thing we need is this kid going over to another country. And then where's the oversight on that? Because we all know the commands aren't going to keep an eye on them.
No.
Well, I have a question for you two, for you and Jess, Amber. So who has jurisdiction, the military or the state? I mean, because if the child's parent is in the military, wouldn't the military have the jurisdiction?
There is a Federal Protection Act. It is the Uniform Spouse Protection Act. There is uniform bills federally for federal protection. Like, for an example, I'm a Gold Star. There's a Gold Star Protection Act. There is these acts that are at a level federally that oversee the state. And so what you're going to find out is the jurisdiction, yes, is where the child resides, because nobody listens. You know, we talked about this 2 meetings ago, where somebody went on live and was like, the federal rules are the supreme laws of the land. No, the Constitution is. So if we're going to get down to it, the military has the jurisdiction, and they are very, very much so required to get in. And it's one of those, sometimes you got to be willing to call them out. I mean, go back to the Brandon Act. I had to whistle blow the Navy to get them to start changing things because we experienced it, but Terry and Patrick Caserta did it all, and I love them for it. But you've got to look at it. The military is in the business of mission readiness and protecting their soldiers and their sailors and blah, 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 blah. And dependents, it's the shittiest job in the world. We don't know what we do when we sign up for it, because we're like, yeah, we'll just travel. No, because they deploy people, they do all sorts of effed up crap. And so, you know, when you're not in the military, okay, and you're a civilian and you're a spouse and you go to command and you say, my husband sexually assaulted me and I need your protection. Well, there's specific policies. Yeah, they can put him in the barracks, and yeah, they're supposed to retract him immediately on base. But even her face says it all. Like, they're not going to do it, because you are at this point, at this pinnacle point, where these sides, the military side and the civilian side, have collided. And so even in social services, even in criminal justice cases, the population collided. So instead of going after one now, you got to go after both at the same time. But you've got to have somebody in the military that's willing to go on base as your advocate, because their advocates aren't even qualified. I had an advocate show up at my hearing, report back to a commander, and you're looking at, they have, just so we're all aware, they have a different amount for spousal support. It's 3/5 gross pay BAH if you're married. It's in MilPERS, you know, so they have all these other laws. Well, guess what? This is where the federal government needs to step over to the civilian side, because even though they have jurisdiction over that sailor and that soldier and that family, there is no bridge gap between the both for them to go into a county court and say, Your Honor, with all due respect, you know, the military is handling this. It's a specific procedure that has to be done. And if you don't know how to navigate it, you're going to end up in these situations. But I mean, at this point, my opinion is working with her and trying to figure out what paperwork's been filed, where has she gone, and, you know, what can be submitted, you know, as maybe a statement. And God forbid, Jess, I mean, and this is just me, it sounds like another one of those big whistleblowing stories that you just get all over the place, because they're really just not putting these families first.
They are not putting the families first. And then this is just like it happens. Then when someone gets out of the military, do you know they can still be a police officer or a fireman and it doesn't show up on their record?
Do you know that under temporary retirement, they have a 36-month grace period? So even when you report that somebody did something unethical and they were charged in the civilian sector, the military then under UCMJ is required to actually recall them back and hold a trial for them.
Ah.
It's like,
Amber, let's hear from Jess for a little bit on what she thinks can happen here.
I am totally in agreement with Amber here. I think this definitely needs to be a whistleblower deal. I think we all need to get on the same page and we all need to work together on this because nothing is going to happen just like it's been happening for her. And I think we have to work together on this just like we do with most cases. I agree. I have nothing more to add with this. She has covered it all. Amber's awesome.
So doesn't the people in the military, correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, I just know I will never join. That's all I know about them.
No, military is not my specialty. I will never join, and this is why.
So, but don't they have to take the oath to uphold the Constitution? Aren't these people domestic terrorists? If you're assaulting your own family?
Right, but here's the thing. Now go to a commander and ask him what the Constitution is. Is it any different than a judge? I mean, judges make rulings every day that are unethical and violation of Equal Protection Act and due process. It's the same thing in the military. There's no accountability. So how do you
Then we shouldn't have military courts either, right?
No.
Do you agree with me? We should not have military courts then. If they're not going to uphold the Constitution, just like these fucked up judges aren't, then we should just have one big system that says fuck the civilians because that's what you become.
We need a simple system with simple laws and simple rules. We need to get rid of what we've got and just go to something simple, to the Constitution. That's what we need.
And that's superior law of the land. So I hope that
Law of the land.
watching this.
Right, absolutely.
Let me riddle you this one. The Brandon Caserta Act, when Brandon had that entire incident, and look it up, the commanding officers, and this happens in the civilian sector, so it just makes you wonder, the commanding officers were never held accountable for the death of Brandon Caserta. Vanessa Gillian, all of these military people that are no longer here to have a voice, okay? Those individuals that were left to and should have been held accountable to the Constitution, right? What happens? 9 out of 10 times they get promoted and transferred bases.
Yes.
And that's the problem. So how do you fix the system, Tiffany? Like, how do you...
Okay, so what you're telling me is the same shit that happens when CPS workers and police and judges, and when they all get caught up in their own bullshit, they get promoted, they just get transferred to another courthouse.
Yes.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so look, we need to do a whole show on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights because it is up to us as citizens, as the government, because we are the government, to overhaul our own system. If we don't like it, we have that right. We have the right to tear down our government and rebuild it the way we want it rebuilt. It's right there in the Declaration of Independence. It's clear as day.
And Jess, you're more than welcome to join us on that day.
You can join anytime you want.
I'm part of a team. It's not just me. So I have my team that helps me. So
Yep.
It's not just my voice.
Yep, that's our,
You can bring them on. We're a team
well.
too.
Yep.
I think we should do, instead of, like I said, they did the military accountability. They had over 2,000 freaking signers from the military retired. I am telling you, there needs to be a petition like circulating like the military accountability. It needs to be the Military Dependent and Children Act and the Children of America Act. Like, you need to tie them together. You need to get every single parent that has ever been affected by this system, because it's not a this, and this. You follow the entire thing and you get it out there, because I think they think that not a lot of people are aware of this. But if you think of how many military dependents would sign this. Think of how many kids could sign this. I mean,
I think our stage plan is something.
That is something that I have written congressmen about in order to get them to have the transparency between the military law and the civilian law. And I've actually named it after my daughter with an attempt to be able to get it to obviously raise awareness to this, but also I know that she's not the only child suffering, because when private investigators are telling me that they used to work for the military and they know better than to keep an eye on their case, they know that it's not going to turn out great for the kids.
I mean, and I can tell you a thing for you, and this is something that I did to kind of get more inept with the military, is I highly suggest that you look into Hill Vets. They allow military dependents to do it. It's a leadership program. It was my foot in the door to be able to speak to these guys, because I have been a victim like you in this situation. And it's like, I just want to jump through the phone and hug you, because they really need to do a better job with these families. And they don't understand that the damage that is getting done, these kids are the next generation. And it's like, what is the point if you're not able to protect them? So I would like to see that bill go through with the two differences,
And that's
at
the
an
thing.
actual level.
Right, and that's the thing, because both Italy and South Korea both substantiated what she had said after interviewing her.
Oh,
So, is there any way, Jess, you're the legal one here. Is there any way that we could submit something to the international courts, the Interpol? I mean, I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Let me get my legal team on this really quick. 1 second.
Okay. There's got to be something internationally we can do to stop this.
the only issue is the United States isn't a part of the UN and some of the other stuff, and they keep it fairly blocked. And so I think the issue is going to be, you're going to have to go military to military. Like, you're going to have to go through the DOD.
Yes.
So what are they going to do? What'd you say, Jess?
I would have to go through the DOD. I was getting the same information.
And unfortunately, it sounded like my lawyer was waiting for an outcry to actually happen to the therapist that was ordered to be on the case as well, in order to have CPS investigated. Like, why do you need 3 different entities to substantiate the same thing? But, I mean, apparently that's what we do.
Fleeting family is required to be the standing precedence on the food chain of the one collecting all this information. Let me ask you, did you ever get a JAG? Like, have you ever been to JAG and spoken to them in person, asking for representation to look into it?
I have a very close affiliation with JAG, being married to a JAG spouse, yeah.
So that may be the other underlying issue, is being closely related to the base. We may actually have to move, and Jess, you may be able to assist in this. We may have to move jurisdictions of the base closer to DC and get the bigger JAG, because what they may be doing is blocking her because she's married to JAG.
Yeah.
That she basically is just, like they claimed I was, just spewing out of whatever. So, I mean, maybe having a third-party advocate come in, a few of them, and help on that aspect to personally go to JAG, because you can't go to the same JAG if your spouse is at that JAG.
No, you cannot. So yeah, this is going to take a team of people to get this done.
Yep.
And yeah, we're absolutely going to have to get petitions and signatures of all the military people. Yeah. So I'm on board with whatever it is that we're going to do from this. I'm on board.
Okay,
And I'm sure my
Jess,
team.
Amber, I put you in a group with her on Facebook already.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
RK, I got you your help that I promised today.
I'm very sorry. I will tell you this, from one military dependent to another, I am extremely sorry that you are experiencing anything and everything. And I know that doesn't take any of this away, but I know exactly what it feels like, because my kids were assaulted and they did nothing. So it sucks. And you just have to fight together as a team. And I've learned that in this field is, you can be dead on and right, You can stand alone, but you're better standing together, coming from all different aspects, because there's different perspectives. And I guarantee you, Jess has way more perspectives than I do. Mine's just limited on policies, but you understand the crime aspect and the criminality, and that in itself is a hard feat, because I'm like,
Well,
none of
that's
that
why
makes
I have
sense.
a team too, because I can't understand everything myself. So that's why I have a team to help me understand all the other aspects of it as well, because I might, understand victims and the crime itself, but I don't understand all the legal aspects. So that's why I have a team. So it takes all of us together to know that we're not alone in this, and we need help. And that's the only way we're going to make change in this field.
I had to step down from Fighter Cries, and we put together Wicked Warriors families, because Fighter Cries wasn't going where it needed to go. So,
And I ended up joining Families United as their advocate for legal aspects. I'm slowly working on my JD, even though I'm fighting the bullet every step of the way, because I don't want to be a part of the bar thing, but it's one of those things that you just got to bite the bullet, And so I'm noticing that all these organizations are coming together under one pretty cool freaking hub, and it's quite exciting.
and most of the time I'm really good with termination cases, but this one's over my head.
Well, yeah, because I'm even having a hard time following it. And I'm pretty good. So we got the United States, we got Italy, I'm assuming, and we got South Korea. Now,
And then one of them's a JAG. So one of the fathers works for JAG. And then I don't know any of the other ones, but there are both Army out of Texas. I'm lost.
the only thing I can say, my only help is if you need a petition signed, I will sign it, because other than that, I can't help with this one.
I'm all for a petition. I will get that going. I will share that everywhere. Well, that's why I like to think about things before I talk too much on it, because I don't want to be wrong in my speaking out of turn.
Right. Well, one of the reasons I wanted you to come on is because I follow you and we're friends on Facebook, and I just read all the stuff that you do, and I absolutely love it. And I'm so honored, yes, now, because you were like, oh, I'm so honored to be understood. I'm like, what, me?
Yes.
I follow your stuff too, because you know a lot about CPS, and that is definitely a topic that I don't know a whole lot about. I've done a couple of cases, but it is just out of my range of expertise. So I stick
dealing with them.
crimes and corruption and corrections, and I stick to my lane.
Yeah, I get it. That's another reason that I wanted you to come on too, because like I do the Constitution, Spanny does terminations, Amber does military and stuff like that. And then because I really want to build a bigger team, even though you have your own team, we all need to come together.
Yes, we do.
It's the only way we're going to change anything.
Absolutely.
And I believe you're already part of our Facebook group. Yes, I can speak. I promise.
Yes. Yeah,
Pat
I would
wanted
like
to say
to talk
hi.
to you, Spanny, about a case after this too.
Okay,
If you do terminations, that would be great.
as long as they're
I
not.
do CPS.
No,
Yeah,
it's not military.
I'm lost. That's all Amber there. That's all Amber right there. Petitions, you send them, I'll sign them. I have no problem with that. I do CPS. I do constitutional rights, human rights, civil rights, inalienable rights, and I hate
do
CPS.
mostly
I hate it.
CPS termination cases. I do dabble a little bit in the criminal department. I'm not like a little bit. So, but for the most part, I do divorce cases, CPS cases that have to deal with termination. I don't really actually deal with family court. I take it up to Supreme Court right away because I'm dealing with the termination stuff.
Okay.
So
Great.
that's where I sit. Family court mostly. I will get sent a client right as they go, I'm going to termination tomorrow. Like, well, you're going to lose this case, but that's okay.
I
Yep.
do
What we
military and domestic violence and sexual assault just because it's stuff that I've experienced and I've had to learn it. And then I've dealt with dabbling with the adoption aspect of things. The Constitution is something that is not my belt, but I understand it. But I always go to Tiffany, and Spanny is the one that deals with CPS. They both do. So it's kind of been like a subjective thing. Mine kind of just came from the military. I had to whistle blow the Navy, and when you got to learn it, there's not a book. And Tiffany says it best. It's the hard knock lives of learning this shit yourself.
Absolutely.
That's how I became an advocate. I had to learn it myself as I went. And then I was sitting there editing stories for Fighter Cries going, I can't just sit back and not do anything. I was literally supposed to edit stories and hit publish, and that was it.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's how Operation No
This
More
person.
Victims started.
So yeah, that didn't work very well. Then I ended
My
up being
philosophy is we're going to go big or we're going to go home. And I don't sit down for nobody. Okay. Not a judge, not a district attorney. I don't sit down and shut up for nobody. So we're going big as far as we can go. And the sky's the limit.
I think at this point, Congress is very well aware of the situations. A lot of people don't understand this. There was a bill about 5-10 years ago called the Christy Huddleston Act. It actually dropped. It's one of the things that I've been working to get back. It really ties the military with the criminal justice system. I mean, I know Jess knows this, and a lot of people, most of these guys that come back, they have PTSD and they cognitively disassociate and they beat the shit out of their significant other, and some have died. And when these spouses, yep, and when these spouses go and they get the help, they don't get it. And so Christy Huddleston died by her Marine husband. Her family has been actively trying to get this bill back up and running because the issue is, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, especially you, Tiff and Spanny, the majority of CPS cases that are coming to the forefront are the cases that these military service members or these veterans are attacking their significant others, and they're being deemed as domestic violence. But with all due respect and fairness, they're not getting the proper treatment that they're actually supposed to be getting, nor are they getting the proper resources. So then what it's doing is it's putting the ball from the military to the civilian and CPS. And then it's basically allowing these governmental agencies to come steal these kids unlawfully, and then deem that person a danger to their family. Or what they do is they do that and then they give the kids to that individual and they leave the victim hanging. And so there's a lot of bills like she was talking about, that I would like to see kind of at the forefront, because unfortunately military families are in a different ballgame. We don't get a cool patch or whatever else, and we don't have identifications, but most of us have been through this shit. And I really would like to see some of the domestic violence and PTSD be really segregated, especially with these bills that have passed, like the Brandon Act. It allows service members to get confidential mental health treatment. They basically state they have a Brandon problem without retaliation. And my thing is, if you could tie the loopholes from one side to the other, the loopholes would basically disappear and the system would basically streamline. And I think, as bad as this sounds, CPS needs to be redone, but there are extreme cases where there needs to be a little bit of rehabilitation for these families. And if they're getting funded to do these rehabilitations, they need to be doing them. And so I would like to see the Christy Huddleston Act come back full-fledged, but, maybe like she named her. Huh?
So CPS is supposed to be there for the families. So they're supposed to be able to help the families. If that means mental or physical or whatever, they're supposed to help. That way they can keep the kids, not take the kids right off the bat and just terminate their rights.
Correct.
Exactly.
Or we can find safety plans.
They're really good for people using drugs.
We don't sign safety plans. We don't consent to urine and hair. We don't consent to nothing.
And the
reason,
I mean, they're really good with drug users. They'll rehabilitate that drug user and give the kids back.
Thank you
But
very
it's
much.
the other families. It's the other families that have other problems that they just take the kids and say, no, you can't have it back.
Or
Yes.
it's the victim that they take the
So I have
kids
to
and give
tell
them
They
you
take
all.
the victim's child. Yes, they do.
What Karen said.
They will
differentiate-
not, right. They will not take an abused child because they can't adopt them. Abused
Yes.
children act out. Children who have never experienced abuse don't start acting out until they're placed in foster homes because that's when the abuse starts.
I have one from Texas where they found the mother because they couldn't adopt the child out. The mother, they found her here in Missouri and tried giving the kid back because they couldn't adopt the child out.
Tiffany.
Yep, couldn't adopt her out. So they found her on Facebook. Found her on
Well,
Facebook.
then there's
They
my
didn't have a
niece.
phone number anymore. And tried
My
giving her
niece
back
ran
after
away
they
from
took
her
her
foster
and
home
wouldn't give
4
her
times.
services.
And they put them, right? Sort of like her situation, Spanny's friend situation, right? They know this child's being sexually abused. And if they
Yes.
terminate her rights, let me tell you why they're terminating her rights. It has nothing to do with mom. Because once mom's out of the picture, they know he's going to abuse her again and they can come right in and snatch her up.
It's
No,
beyond that,
what
Tiffany.
she's going through now is Stockholm syndrome. She is getting to where she won't act out, period, because she knows better now.
And
Yeah, but
she's
you
a pretty
also
little
gotta
girl
look
and
at
she'll get
it too,
adopted up
that
in a heartbeat.
they're gonna pull that kid and they're gonna discharge him and then they're gonna hit him later under UCMJ and then they're gonna say, I had no flipping idea. That's typically what
12,
happens
by
in
the
the
way.
military.
What'd you say, Jess?
I said she's probably a pretty little girl and she'll be adopted out in a heartbeat.
She's 12.
Ugh.
It's terrible. The only
yeah,
way
no,
to fix the system, right?
My niece
The
ran
only
away.
way, huh?
I said my niece ran away from her home, foster home 4 times, and then they just give her back to mom because they didn't want to deal with it anymore.
Well, yeah. I had a lawyer tell me one time, Tiffany, tell your kids to act out. They'll send them home. That's what he told me. That's exactly what he said to me. And he was court appointed.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I was in foster care for 60 days. I was medically taken because I was not going to school because I was back then you couldn't, be homeschooled. You had to have, a doctor's note, and I was a sick child. I have a rare form of cancer. And so I was taken, and it took 60 days to get me back home. So yeah, I understand the CPS cases. It really rubs me wrong, and that's probably why I don't do many of them.
No, oh, trust me, I get it. I get it.
Mm-hmm. I
So
do
we
more of the criminals. I've gotten a few fired, so I enjoy that aspect of getting the social workers fired.
Oh, well, we definitely need you on our team.
Yes, that part I do enjoy.
So with
that's
criminality
great.
and criminals, have you had any corruption cases where like entire towns or cities come against a victim? And then what ends up happening is they find out that they were all basically just coerced to do stuff, or they're paid, or there's other things. And it's just like a ring, like a circle ring of corruption.
I'm working on one right now.
Oh, my.
I am working on one.
Is that the one you're talking about in a minute?
No.
Okay.
I'm working on a town right now. It's quite a big area. There's a couple together, and I was actually told not to take a case because of this town. I was specifically told don't take a case, and then I know another media person that took a case down there, and she was ruined.
Yeah,
She
I
was
might be able to
taken
help you with
to
that
jail.
one.
She was, yeah.
I don't
So,
mind biting that bullet either. So if you need my help, let me know.
Absolutely. There's a jailer that he's where he needs to be, but it's all part of this area. He's a pedo. Was caught molesting his kids. So he's in the jail where he worked at. So he's where he truly deserves to be. But it's all from this town. And yeah, it's quite big. So we're working on quite a few stories right now.
Hey, Tiff,
Wow.
I think that maybe we should do a show on address confidentiality. And I'm going to throw this out to the bone because 38 out of 50 states have it. And there's actually specific procedures that require in any court case, depending on the state and the actual statute, that the attorney generals are actually supposed to be notified. And the issue I have with this is if you go to the attorney general's website, it states that they do not give legal advice. So here's my underlining question. If you do not give legal advice, then why in your policies and procedures of the state does it state that you then have to get notified to validate address confidentiality of a victim? And you are to be notified for child support and child custody cases. And my question is, what happens when you don't do that? Like, who do you go to?
Because the state protects the state.
Yep.
The attorney general works for the state. So when you have a crime, you do not go to the attorney general. You never go to the attorney general. Never. And people make that mistake all the time. And
So how do you
therefore,
fix it?
You don't go to the attorney general. You go to the general attorney. You try them. So how you fix it?
Tiffany's like, oh,
That's a good
shit.
answer. That's a good question.
It baffles me because the address confidentiality is explicit for victims and it's actually supposed to be transferred to between the states that have it. And so what I'm noticing is victims of address confidentiality are not having their address confidentiality kept. And then the
Yes.
suspicious people are running rampant all over their rights. And so I think that there needs to be, because until you've become a part of the address confidentiality, I can tell you a lot of people don't even know it exists and nobody even knows how to get to it. And I think if you're going to do Constitution, you also need to do address confidentiality and understand that domestic violence protective orders violate the Equal Protection Act. And that's another aspect that I think can tie into that Constitution Bill of Rights thing too, is domestic violence protective orders are required to get full-fledged, full faith credit regardless. So why aren't they? You know what I mean? And how do you help victims in that situation navigate the system if you have to flee for safety, so on and so forth?
Well, we can do that next Sunday if you want. Just get all your stuff together because you know more about it than anybody. But I will say this. The Fourth Amendment gives you privacy anyway, right? Like if I had somebody call me one time. They asked for my daughter. Now, I'm a smart mouth. Okay, my daughter's grown. And it was a credit card company. And I said, I am not her babysitter. I'm her mother. And even if I know where she's at, she has the right to privacy. Don't call my phone again looking for my daughter. If you can't find her, she doesn't want to be found.
I think it's also educating people on how to use the constitutional amendments. I think that's a big thing too, is like you can speak Constitution, but until you role play and figure out how to use each constitutional amendment for these situations like CPS,
I'll do it. I'll do it. That's my specialty. I will definitely do that. And there's only been 27 amendments to the Constitution. Okay. And we don't even use 2 of them anymore because one has to do with prohibition, alcohol. And I forgot what the other one was. So technically we don't even use 2 of them, but we can do that. I have no problems doing that.
What about the loopholes? Like they're using loophole laws to the Constitution. That needs to be addressed too.
Well, look here. I don't know about no loopholes because the Constitution has made it very clear that it cannot be construed to anything other than what it is. And it is superior law of the land.
I am going to call it here in 5 minutes because I have dogs that need out, and I think Kyle
No,
wants
that's
to go.
fine. We can stay on after this. We can all stay on after this. But yeah, that'll be our show
Okay,
next week, Spanny.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute my mic and hide my camera for a minute while I take out the dogs.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
So yeah, that's what we'll do. And Jess, if you want to come back on, well, I want you to come back on.
Thank you.
I will definitely do the Constitution, and then you can do the address confidentiality. But see, this is what people don't understand. The 14th Amendment and the 5th Amendment give people the right to due process. I want two things taken off. I do not like ex partes at all. Okay. And if you read a law book and you look up ex parte, it clearly says unethical, and they are unethical because it violates the 14th Amendment to the other person's side of the story. The other word I want taken off is belief. And I said this last time. Unless a CPS worker, a judge, a prosecutor, or anybody else has a crystal ball, right, that can say, oh, I believe Miss Wise is a danger to society because 30 years from now, she's going to be somebody. Who the hell are you to say what I'm going to do as a person? If you got a crystal ball, I'd like to see it. So those two things I want them completely off the books. We can never suspend a law, but they can stop using it.
I don't think it's meant for CPS workers. I don't think that was meant for that because that was wrote before there were CPS workers. That is not
But they
meant to be
use
used
it.
by them. It shouldn't be.
Exactly. That's my point. I'm not saying, well, personally, I just want ex partes taken off the table because everybody has to go and say their story. I can't go to court and say, Jess threatened to kill me yesterday, right? Now I'm here. I need a 5-day protective order. And then in 5 days, you can bring her in and she can tell you her side. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. Nobody knows if Jess threatened to kill me. It's my word against hers. Why can't we both be in the courtroom at the same time? Just like when CPS runs. Go ahead, Jess.
Well, I do understand your point on that, but so recently it was let's just say hypothetically. I'll say hypothetically, it's for the victim of a child that needs an ex parte for the sex offender.
And those are extreme cases, and I get that. Okay, and I do get that.
Yeah.
But
so,
this is the other part to that.
You're saying too. I understand what you're saying.
Right. It's like a catch-22, right? Because you want those people to be protected, but in the same thing, because they are state actors, let's just be real about it. These state actors will make a decision without knowing all the facts. Now, I'm not saying a woman who was raped and knows her rapist should not be able to get a protective order. That is not what I'm saying in an ex parte hearing. What I'm saying is put that jerk off on his camera screen and make him be in the courtroom some way or the other. It's just a catch-22 for me. But the biggest problem that I have is that CPS uses it to get removal orders. And in those removal orders, they put, I believe the child is in danger, right? No, because just you, me, and Amber can't walk in the courtroom and say, hey, Your Honor, I believe this is going on because I've done that. And you know what they told me? Get out of my courtroom until you have evidence.
I do have one more thing, and this is stupid.
No, it's not. Go ahead.
A void order is a void order. Okay. According to void orders, you don't have to supposedly file to make an order void. Can somebody explain to me how you get an inspection of record of a void order? That's been something that's come up because if a judge violates your due process and your Equal Protection Act is violated, how do
Amber,
you
read your messenger real quick.
Record?
Amber,
I don't
read your
know that.
messenger real quick. It's from Karen, but I'm walking my dogs, so.
Jess might be able to answer that.
I don't know. I don't know. My team's not here for backup. He went to go
That's
pick up my
okay.
boy.
It's just been something that's been on my mind the more and more you read it. It's a void order is a void order. Well, if a void judgment
order is a void order. That's
right,
what I
was
heard.
done
So that's
in
why I was
fraud, duress, violation of due process. Now, let me tell you, when you tell a police officer this order is void, you and I both know that they're not going to honor it. So how do you get an inspection of record of a void order? Like, there's nothing that I found on this. And I've had
Right.
quite a few people ask me about it, and I'm like, I don't know. So if anybody knows, it'd be nice.
I don't know.
I don't know. I will have to ask on that and get back to you after the show.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've never even heard of
Because-
that.
Because my one investigator was a police officer and knows a lot about the law. So that's why I would have to ask him.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
So that's why I ask many people before I like to answer some questions, because if I question it at all, I do not like to say something stupid, because you just can't take it back when it's recorded. Like my videos, I can cut and record and cut and edit, and this I cannot.
All right, I'm gonna have Spanny in the show, but you guys stay on. Spanny, if you can hear me, can you end the show? I